Hello everyone and welcome to this lecture in the GitHub Masterclass. Today we are going to learn about how to convert local projects into GitHub projects. Until now we have seen how to create a GitHub repository, how to clone that repository onto your local machine, how to make changes, then how to add, how to commit files, and then how to push the files from your local to the remote repository. But what if you start creating projects onto your laptop or your computer and then you want to convert those local projects into GitHub projects? We are going to see the exact procedure as to how we are going to implement this step by step. So let's get started with today's lecture. I'll jump directly into VS Code, and if you remember, we have created this ML project, and within that we have already created a GitHub repository called machine learning project. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm actually going to create a new folder over here, which is not a GitHub repository for now, and I'm going to call it my local repo. Since this is a local repository, it's locally present on my laptop right now. It's not connected to GitHub at all. So I'm going to now open this in integrated terminal, and when I open this in integrated terminal, I am automatically taken to this local repo. So currently my working directory is this local repo and I am present in this directory. So let's do one thing. Let's do ls. Let's see the files over here, and we can see that there are no files. But now let's do ls minus a, which shows the hidden files over here. So when you do ls minus a, you will see dot and dot dot. However, you do not see the .git, right? And that is because this is not a GitHub repository yet. To make this local repository recognized as a GitHub repository, the first step which we have to do is the git init command. So when you create a local repo, the first step is that you have to use the git init command. What this command does is that it initializes a new empty git repository in the current directory. So it also creates a .git folder to track the version history for the project. It's like you have now initialized Git and told that, hey, the project which I'm working on, I want to eventually convert it into a Git repository. So I want you to track what all changes I'm going to implement in this project. So the way to initialize this project as a Git repository is to type git init. So I'm just going to go here and I'm going to type git init. So here you see when you type, let me first, increase the space over here. Yeah, when you type git init, you will see that initialized empty git repository. So we have now initialized an empty git repository, and now let's check whether this repository actually has been initialized. The way to do this is ls minus dash a, and you will see that now along with dot and dot dot we have this dot git also, which means that now git is tracking this folder, this local repo in which we are in right now. Git is tracking this folder. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to start adding files into this folder. So let's actually add a new file over here, and I'm going to type this as readme.md, and I'm going to say that this is a local project which I have started. Awesome. And then I'm going to create one more file over here, and I'm going to call that file as index.html, and we are just going to add something random over here. We are going to add a paragraph saying that this is my website. Okay, now we have created these two files, but we have not yet staged them. We have not even added them yet. So let us do git status and let's see. So when we do git status, you will see that there are two files, readme.md and index.html, but these are untracked files, right? Which means that git is not yet tracking them since we have not added them yet. So let us use the git add command which we have learnt about previously. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the terminal so that you can see the screen clearly, and I'm going to type git add dot. What this will do is that it will add the file. So now when I do git status, you will see that Now Git is tracking these files, right? Which means that these files are now added to the staging area. They have not yet been verified or they have not yet been committed, but they have been added to the staging area. That's very good. And now let me commit this. So I'm going to type, let me clear this first so that you can see the commit command clearly. So I'm going to type git commit, and then the message which I'm going to put is that added readme and index files. So now you will see that we have committed these files and now they are ready to be pushed onto the repository. So now let us go to our Canva and see what all we have done so far. So we implemented the git init command, which initialized a new empty git repository. Then what we did is we added files to this local repository. We used the git add dot command to add the files to the staging area. And then we use the git commit, which means that git has now created a snapshot. And now the files are committed. Now the only thing which we have to do is push them to the repository. So now, up until now, the project exists on my local, which means that it exists on my laptop, right? We have not created a repository for this project on github.com. So this is the next step which we have to do. We have to go to github.com, and then what we have to do is click on your icon over here and click on your repositories. When you click on your repositories, you will see this machine learning project, which is the repository which we created until now. And I'm going to create one more repository here, and I'm going to title this as local repository, local project repo, let's say, just to indicate that this is my local project. So I'm giving it the name local project repo. I'm saying that I want this to be a public repository, and I'm not initializing the repo with a readme file because I've already added the readme file in my local project. So I don't want to initialize one more readme file over here. So I just give the repository name, I select public, and let me add a description. This repository is for showing how to convert local projects into a GitHub repo, right? That's great. And then let us create this repository. So when you click on create this repository, you will see an interface like this. So until this stage, what has happened is we have created the GitHub repository, which is in remote, and we have pushed the changes. We have committed the changes into our local, but we have not yet connected the remote GitHub repository with this local project. So the next command which we have to learn about is that we need to create a bridge between the local and the remote repository, which lets the local PC or laptop know that, hey, I know that you have created a local project. Now look at this repository which has been created on github.com and push your local project into this repository. We have to create that bridge between the local and the remote repository. The way to create that bridge is using the git remote add origin command. So the git remote add origin command, what it does is that it associates a remote repository such as this one which we have created right now. It associates this remote repository with your local git repository under the name origin. So if you see git remote add, and up till this part it's fine, but you may be thinking what is this origin, right? So origin is the name. You can even change it to any other name, but it's convention to mention the remote repository with the name origin. So it's recommended to use the name origin. You can of course change it to other name, but later when you do git push, you will have to use the new name. And then here you have to mention the link of the uh, remote repository, and the link of the remote repository you will get from here. So the command which we have to type in the terminal now is git remote add origin, which means that we have a remote repository with the name origin, and with this link, and we have to link it to our local repository, and we will create that bridge that way. So let me copy this now over here, and let me copy this, and let me use git remote add origin and paste the link, right? So let me do git, let me type in this terminal. Yeah, so git remote add origin, and I have pasted this link over here, and I have pressed enter over here. So you'll see that now we have connected a bridge between the local and the remote repository. However, we still need to verify that the bridge has been connected, right? And for that, we'll go to the next step. So let's see over here where the next step is. We saw the git init, we saw add files, add and commit, we created a new GitHub repo, we saw this part about creating a bridge, and now we have to check the bridge. We have to check whether the bridge has been created successfully or not. So for that, the command which we have to use is git remote and -v. What this does is that git remote -v will verify the remote repository. So let me type this over here: git remote -v. So see here, you can see that the link of the repository which we just created has come up over here, local project repo, and that's the same name which we gave in github.com, right? Awesome. Which indicates that we have indeed created the bridge between the local and the remote successfully. So the remote -v command helps you to verify the bridge. So I'm going to clear the terminal now. And now, since we have established the bridge, now we are ready to push the changes from our local to the remote. So let's use the push command which we have learned earlier: git push origin main, right? And and then let us see the results which we have obtained on the github.com repository. All right. So after executing this command, we'll need to provide permissions to push, and then you will see that immediately the changes which we had implemented in this repository have been pushed to the GitHub repository which we had created, local project repo. Now, what we can do is that we can actually go to this repository and see whether these two changes have been made: index.html and readme.md. So I'm going to my GitHub repository online right now, and I'm going to just refresh it. And here you can see the readme.md and the index.html files have been added here successfully. So this is how you can create a local project. Then you can do git init, and then you can stage the files through git add. You can commit the files, and then you can do git push. And to create the bridge between the local and the remote, you will need to use the git remote add origin and the link of the repository command. Once you use this command, the bridge between your local and the remote repository will be created, and you will be able to push changes from your local folder into GitHub. So if you start projects locally, this is how you can convert them into GitHub projects. The recommended practice is to already start a GitHub repository, then clone it, and then start working on local changes, because that's how usually big projects will proceed if you are part of a bigger team who is working on a code base or a software together. However, sometimes we don't keep this in mind and we create local folders and start working locally. And then we always have this question that how can I convert this into a GitHub repository? I hope this lecture made that very clear to you. In the next lecture, what we'll do is that we'll start looking about branches. So, how to create Git branches, what are the advantages of branches, and we'll cover all of this in a lot of detail. Thanks a lot, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lecture.